And this is going to be the webinar for the new accounting features as well as the audit reports. So we're going to be talking about those year-end audit reports. And, you know, that's going to be an important thing to look at for year-end audits. A lot of people don't realize that the software has audit reports built into it. So it's kind of a hidden gem. If you haven't looked at the audit reports, I'm going to talk about each report in detail. And then after that's done and we've looked at all the audit reports and what their uses are, we're then going to look at some of the other newer features of the accounting system, including Ar Invoice listing and the PO Receiver Control Center. All right, so I think we're pretty much ready to go. I see we have the waiting room turned on, so I'm going to try to keep my eye on that waiting room and admit people as they come in. So you know what? Actually, I'm going to get rid of that waiting room so that people can automatically join the meeting, so you don't have to worry about not getting back in if you get kicked out for some reason. All right, so I think we have a good amount of people in here now, kind of a lot of participants in these webinars, these free webinars that we do. So that's good to see. Just looking at some of the people in the meeting room now. I do see some familiar faces, some people that I know I've helped out with in the past. And so it looks like we have mostly controllers, accounting people, comptrollers in the meeting, which would make sense since we're doing audit reports. So let me just make sure that my screen is being shared, okay? Yep, looks good. So if you're in the meeting watching, what you should see is my training environment. And I actually have the accounting module pulled up in my training environment. So if you're not able to see that, you might have it minimized or something like that. So just look around, you should see, I've just opened up the check writer so that you can sort of see what I'm doing on my screen. I've just opened the check writer. So make sure that you're able to see that on your system. Another quick piece of advice for those of you who have 2 monitors on your computer, one thing that you can do is open up this meeting in one of your monitors, and then on the other screen, go ahead and open up your live you know, Motility Software environment or your Sys2K environment. And that way you can actually run these audit reports along with the meeting. It's a great way to learn just by doing. So that's just a quick piece of advice if you have 2 monitors. All right, so it's I have it at 1:07 p.m. right now. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And in the accounting module, under the tools menu, you do actually have an audit reports option. So if you go to tools, audit reports, and click on that, what's going to happen is the system will run through and print out all of the vehicle inventory audit reports. So I don't like to do it this way because it can be kind of confusing. What ends up happening is you have all these reports that just print out, and then you then kind of have to look at them. And if you look down here, it actually opens up about 6 windows at once. So then you're having to kind of look at all these windows. And it's tough because the titles of the audit reports are a little bit nondescript, like Vehicle Inventory Audit 05 doesn't necessarily tell you what the report is. So let me show you a better way. I'm going to close out of all these windows now, and I'll show you how I like to run the audit reports. What you'll do is start by clicking Reporting at the top of any module, hit Reporting. And then within the Reporting module, open up Accounting Reports, and then click Audit Reports. All right, so under Audit Reports, what this is going to show you is a listing of all the audit reports with the actual title of the report and a little checkbox to indicate if you want to run that report or not. Now, in addition to the main unit inventory audit reports, we also have other audit reports down here at the bottom. So by going in through reporting, you'll actually have access to more audit reports than if you went into the tools menu. So just a quick tip on that. What you have down here at the bottom, you have the ability to select all inventory reports, select all other reports, or you can deselect the other reports, deselect the inventory reports, you know, so that way you can kind of click on one of these buttons and get a group of reports. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and go through these reports one by one and talk about what information they display and how they can be useful for you doing a year-end audit. The very first report is sold units with inventory balances. So that's one, you don't need to set any filters. Most of these audit reports, you're not going to need to set any filters on them. So this is the vehicle inventory report. Again, it's sold units with inventory balances. So essentially when a unit is sold in inventory, we're looking to have a zero balance in the actual asset account. So this report is looking at NV and UV GL accounts in the accounting system. That means new vehicle and used vehicle accounts. And then it's going to tie these accounts out with their stock numbers, because every transaction that posts to accounting has to have a stock number if it hits used vehicle account. And for each stock number, it's going to tell us what the balance is and then what the sold date was from unit inventory. It's also going to tell you if there are ROs open, so you can kind of research that. Now, this audit report, you're probably already picking up on this. It's not something you want to do at the end of the year. It's more likely something you want to do more often than that. Maybe even on a weekly basis when you first get started, just to kind of, because the kind of problems that you're going to come up against with this, you know, if you have ROs that are open, or maybe the accounting transactions are not being created correctly in the finance module, you know, so those are the kind of problems that you'll come up against, or possibly a work order has closed after you created the accounting transactions in the system, you know, so this is something you want to look at probably on a weekly basis. And ideally what should happen is, you know, there shouldn't be anything on this report, because if it's a sold unit, it should have a zero balance, and you shouldn't be carrying any kind of inventory balance, whether it's positive or negative, on a sold unit. So that's an important one. Next one is sold units with inventory balances on multiple profit centers. So what this means is, if you have a unit that was brought into profit center A, but then sold at a profit center B, in this example, this would be for dealerships that have multiple locations. What we're doing is we're tracking and making sure, this is one example. You see it's the same stock number on both lines. 1200 is the inventory account. And you see in profit center A, we have negative 17,000. In profit center F, we have positive 17,000. So technically this is a zero balance unit. It's just that it's not consolidated across all profit centers. So it's like one profit center owes another profit center. We shouldn't have that in an inventory account. So that's a good thing to audit. Units on 2 or more inventory account schedules. So what this is looking at is, yeah, a lot of times you might bring a unit in on the towable inventory account, but then when you post it to accounting on deal desking, it just uses a generic, you know, unit account, not the towable. So in this case, we have new other inventory is the actual default GL, but then 1200 new unit inventory is where the transactions actually hit. So you shouldn't have these problems too often if you're using the account. If you're using the accounting system correctly, what happens is when you create accounting transactions, it's going to use the default GL to put that into inventory. Same thing happens when you post your deal to accounting. It's going to use the default GL. The only time we really have this problem is if you're converting balances in from an external accounting system. Because a lot of times the accounting transaction that you're using manually might be different than the default GL on the unit. So again, just something to look at, and it could help you uncover some problems. Units on 2 or more floor plan schedules. So basically it's the same thing as the inventory audit we looked at before, except it's looking at floor plan balances. So Here we have the default account, which some of these are missing their default accounts, which is a concern, right? But then if the accounting transaction posted to a different account than what the unit is supposed to be in, that's what we're showing with this audit account. So if this unit should have been in 2310, it was posted into 3210. Well, somebody probably just fat fingered that. They put 32 instead of 23. You know, so just look at this from time to time. It'll help you catch problems potentially with, you know, with what's in inventory. And I just want to point out that if you look at the title of this report, it's not as descriptive as if you were actually looking at it from the reporting module. It just says vehicle inventory audit, and then you have to look in small writing, vehicles on 2 or more floor plan schedules. So this is why I really like to see this, this reporting screen first. All right, sold units still on floor plan based on inventory, balance, and accounting, based on registration of sale date, based on sold checkmark and unit inventory. So 3 different ways of running, but they all show you the same information. It's going to depend on how you're posting these things to accounting. And the truth is, the reason why we have 3 different versions is because you can use this report to find out which units you have to write a check to your floor plan company to pay off those units. Because generally speaking, depending on how you have the software configured, because we do have a setting to automatically create the payable when you post the deal to accounting. So if you're doing that, you really don't have to run these audit reports, but it's still a good idea to do every now and then. What you can do is use this audit report to find out, you know, based on the registration of sale date or based on when the sold check mark appeared in unit inventory, you know, which units you have to pay off to the bank. So they all basically look the same. So I'm only going to run one of them. It's going to give you a listing of stock numbers, the floor plan amount, and then the date sold, depending on which date you're running the report for. All right, so that's what that audit report is for. And it can be used, as I said, more than just a once a year thing. It should be used pretty regularly if you're auditing that. We have master inventory units missing GL account numbers. So what that's talking about in master inventory is you have a sale inventory cost account. And so this is telling you if you have units in inventory that are missing one or all of those accounts. So a lot of mine in my test system, you can see we have no sale account, inventory, cost account, or floor plan account. You know, so if this is a unit in inventory, it just doesn't have any of these accounts filled out. So if I click on that, I think it may or may not open up the unit so that I can see it. All right, so what we're talking about is on the financial tab, we have a sale account, inventory account, and cost account. And we also have a floor plan account up here at the top. So because these are all missing, that's what's causing this unit to show up on the audit report. And this isn't really a new feature, but whenever you see a blue link on a report like this, it's a link that'll allow you to drill down either to another report, or in the case of a stock number, it'll actually open up that stock number in inventory. So that's a functionality we added maybe a couple of years ago. All right, so then we look at units that are missing from the master inventory. And I have no data found. So basically what that's saying is, you know, if we have a stock number that's been entered in, but there is no unit for it in master inventory, then that's a pretty serious problem. So you don't want to see that audit report pop up. So just a little word about how these generally should be run. You can usually come down here and hit select all inventory reports, hit show reports, and you really shouldn't see anything pop up. If your system is perfectly healthy, you can do this, hit show reports, and you'll just get a series of pop-up windows that say no data found, no data found, no data found. So just like you saw when I did my units missing from master inventory, we should see a series of these that just pop up for every inventory report, with the exception maybe of sold units still on floor plan. So if you're waiting to pay the bank for those floor plan entries, you might have some things pop up here from time to time. So those are all the inventory account audit reports. You know, certainly you want to run these at year end. I know that this training is kind of focused on the year end audits, but a lot of these, you want to integrate that probably more often than just once a year. All right, so that brings us to the other audit reports down here. These are not necessarily vehicle specific, but these are a way for you to audit problems that might pop up in the accounting system. And you can certainly run these more than once a year, but definitely it's a good idea to keep an eye on these as well. So we have our accounts payable missing names. No data found on this. So the reason why you might have missing names in here is if you actually had an AP account that was not controlled at some point, you might have posted some transactions there that don't actually have an entity number. So this is going to show you your AP account is supposed to be controlled by entity number. So if you've ever posted something without an entity number, it's going to throw off some of your balances because you'll have a different balance on the balance sheet than what you have, say, on your AP schedule. So this is going to help you nail that down and make sure that what's on the AP schedule matches the balance sheet perfectly. As far as the balance forward is concerned, it should all have names on there. Same thing with accounts receivable. I was sort of hoping to show you some of these problems, but it looks like my test system doesn't have any missing names, which is a good thing for the test system, but it basically, I can tell you that it's really just a list of all the transactions that have posted either to AR or AP that we don't know who the entity is for one reason or another. So just a good idea to run those. You shouldn't have that condition existing in your system. Okay, so then we have the invalid account report. Invalid account is your 4 zeros. Sometimes it's also called an audit account, but anytime that the system doesn't know what to do with an automatic accounting transaction, the system will put 4 zeros in to that accounting transaction so that you can run this report and look at your invalid accounts. So you're probably, some of you, most of you I would say, are familiar with transferring transactions. So when you transfer transactions, what's happening is it's going to catch all the errors where the system didn't know what to do automatically so that you can go in and fix them manually. A lot of times what I'll do, especially on new dealerships, they may not know about the audit accounts. So what I'll do is I'll take the 4 zeros account out of the chart of accounts so that there is no 4 zeros account. And what that means is your transactions will hit the transfer transactions and they'll just fall flat. And you'll have to fix the problem before they actually hit accounting. So what the 4 zeros account does for you is it allows those transactions to get through transfer transactions and actually post to accounting. Even though they posted an error, they're actually going to post, and then you can come in and run this invalid account report from time to time and actually put the correct GL account on all these postings. So a lot of these are going to be things like maybe units that were missing their GL accounts. You know, so when you posted a deal to accounting, if that unit didn't have GL accounts and we had a 4 zeros account in there, you wouldn't see any error messages. You wouldn't see anything pop up in red telling you that you had to fill out a GL account. And so that's what the 4 zeros does, is it would allow you to post all these things to accounting and then fix them after the fact. So you can see where the problem kind of comes into play. I usually disable the 4 zeros account because unless you're actually going to be auditing it almost on a weekly basis, it doesn't really help you. It kind of almost allows these things to post unless you know how to audit them off. So that's your invalid account report. If you want, and this is probably going to be more useful for larger dealerships where you have a very robust auditing schedule, you can put a 4 zeros account in your chart of accounts, and then any kind of errors will suddenly pop up on the invalid account report. All right, entries with missing journals. So if we do have anything in here that's missing a journal, what that's talking about, of course, is your journals A1 through Z1. So if something is posted without a journal, we can catch that and make sure that we fix it so that it will show up in these journals on the left. Entries with missing profit centers. This is also something that you don't want to have happen. It really shouldn't happen with our software. But if for some reason something posts to accounting without a profit center, well, what happens is a lot of the accounting reports will suddenly be inaccurate because, well, you can run your GL account for all profit centers, and we don't know which profit center this amount is supposed to go into. So anyway, just something that you should run from time to time. Make sure that there's a profit center on every accounting transaction. All right, unposted transactions by month. So this is a pretty convenient transaction because what is an unposted transaction? Well, an unposted transaction is something that's been created in accounting, but you haven't checked that little posted checkbox at the top of the transaction. So for whatever reason, these transactions may be out of balance. Okay, they may be, it may be that they're missing the entity on a controlled account like AP or AR. If there's no entity number, it won't allow you to post. The other thing about unposted transactions is that you cannot close your month until you've posted everything that is unposted. So we've actually had a lot of requests for this audit report. It's a fairly new one because at the time that you're going to close your months, it can be difficult to know which transactions are unposted. If you've never seen this audit report, you're probably familiar with the not posted journal, NP. So the not posted journal is going to give you all the unposted transactions, but only for this current month. So what you've had to do in the past is go to File, Change Month and Year, and this way you can then say, okay, well, what are last month's unposted transactions? So this audit report allows you to run it and get a listing of everything that's unposted so you can find them and close your months. All right, transaction date versus posting month/year. I'm sure, especially if you're using a check writer, you've seen those warnings that pop up that say, okay, the posting month doesn't match the transaction date. Generally speaking, you're going to want those to match up. The only cases where they shouldn't match up are cases where you're making changes to a closed month and there's no way for you to reopen the month because you've already gotten finalized numbers. So what you can do then is create an accounting transaction that is posted in the current month, but the transaction date is in the previous month. Really, one of the only reasons I would suggest this is if you had to reconcile your bank account for the previous month and you've already closed that month, and you found that there was a check that was missing. Well, you can't put that check into the previous month because it's closed. So what you can do is create the check in the current month, but then transaction date of that check is last month, and it will show up on this audit report. So from time to time, and I bet you anything, if you guys were to run this on your current systems, you probably would have a number of things in here. It's okay if you do this. You just have to be aware that it's been done and make sure that it's not happening without your knowledge would be the main thing. Because it could be someone in AP or AR, one of the lower accounting departments could have accidentally created a transaction. So you do want to audit this from time to time. One of the things that's going to happen if you do this is certain reports will not tie out. So for example, if I'm running a report by transaction date, that report will be different than, say, for example, your balance sheet or your profit and loss, which is based on the posting month. So that's the kind of thing to look out for. You can definitely create these transactions that have a different posting month and transaction date. You just really have to be aware of it and understand that certain reports will no longer tie out. So that's the audit for transaction date versus posting month and year. duplicate entry audit. So what we're looking for with duplicate entries will be anything with the same reference number. So here we have 2 reference numbers here. Number of duplicates is 2. Here's the transaction date, posting month. So what we're saying is these look like duplicates, and maybe to check that out, look for that reference number, find out if it's potentially a duplicate. And then we have transactions missing required entity. So what this is looking at would be if you have a controlled account, a good example would be an AP account or AR account, because those accounts are controlled by entity number. A lot of times what will have happened is maybe at some point in the past, this was not a controlled account, but then you put a requirement on that account to require an entity number. We're just looking at all the accounts that require an entity number and giving you a listing of all the transactions that have posted to that account with no entity number. All right, so if it's a very old account, maybe it was a balance forward account in the past, but now you want it to be a controlled account, you can pretty much expect that you're going to see this audit report populate with some of those older transactions that are missing their entity number. All right, so then we have transactions missing required stock number. So the same thing is true here. There's a checkbox in the system that says, require a stock number to post an accounting transaction here. And it's very convenient for used inventory accounts, new vehicle accounts, NV, UV, as well as UF, NF, which would be used floor plan, new floor plan. All these accounts are controlled by stock number. So we put a requirement on the system that you can't post anything here without requiring a stock number. So anyway, the only reason you'd have anything on this audit report would be if, for example, you had an account that did not have the checkbox checked to require a stock number and something got posted without one, then it would show up on this report. So keep an eye on that. One of the things that this condition can cause is if you were to look at, for example, one of your schedules, so like let's say a used floor plan schedule, the balance that you see on all the stock numbers is not going to match the balance sheet because we had some balances that don't actually have a stock number on them. So, if you find a problem like that, where you're looking at a schedule, like say for an inventory account or a floor plan account, and the total balance of that schedule by GL account does not match the balance forward on the balance sheet, it's probably because there's some transactions that are actually missing a stock number, so we don't know how to run a schedule on it. And this would be a way to look at those and get them fixed. So that's a really convenient one. I'd say this, you probably want to run these more than just once a year. And I mean, that's just my suggestion for most of these audits. These are all things that you want to keep up with. A year-end audit, absolutely, you want to run them and kind of fix those problems, but generally it's going to be more of a monthly or maybe even a weekly thing with some of these inventory audit reports. All right, voided invoices still in accounting. So this is going to look at, so for example, let's say you had like a parts invoice that was voided. If it's actually still in accounting, or if it still has an accounting balance on that invoice number, we're going to show it on this audit report. So there really shouldn't be any reason why there's something here. But I suppose if you went into accounting and made some kind of an adjustment incorrectly, it could cause something to show up here. So here again, just take a look at these. These are all the RO numbers, the date that they were voided, and then the dollar amount. So what we're saying is if it's voided in parts and service, that means the tech didn't get paid. It means that the parts didn't get relieved from inventory. So, it's basically a voided invoice, but we still have something hanging out in accounting. So just go ahead and research those if you see them. And that takes care of all of the audit reports. So hopefully that was a little bit more of an enlightening view of these. I will say most of the dealers that I talk to are not doing a proper audit on their either a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So implementing a process like this really will help you catch a lot of those errors before they, become real problems or before you close a month. This certainly before you close a month or provide final accounting balances to the owners, you would want to do an audit report and make sure there aren't any of these outstanding issues. All right, so that's a good amount of time to spend on audit reports. We spend about 30 minutes on them, which is what I was expecting to spend. The next thing to talk about are a couple of somewhat new features for the accounting module, and they're not brand new. So you probably do have these in your current version. Whatever version you're on, you probably have access to these two things. Although I will say most of the dealerships I've talked to, they haven't actually seen them. So what we're going to be looking at under the banking menu is 05 AR invoices and 06 purchase order receiving ticket control center, PORE control center. So 05 and 06, they're probably available in your current software, but you can't see them because they're restricted by security. So what you'll most likely have to do is put in a request to allow yourself access to see 05 and 06. There's a security permission that has to be turned on for you to see those. And so AR invoices, for example, we added this AR invoice list to software. Oh, it's been a long time ago now. It's been a couple of years, I think. My estimate would be that we actually enabled this, but a lot of dealers kind of missed it because their security permissions didn't allow it. Okay, so because it's new, that's why we do these webinars, to show people, okay, we have these features, you just have to request to have them turned on in security a lot of times. Okay, so 05 AR invoices, what this is a listing of accounts receivable or general AR invoices that have been created, and it allows you to manage these kind of like the way the parts and service module allows you to manage tickets for customers. So it's super convenient. If you do AR invoices at the dealership, and there are some reasons why you might need to do an AR invoice for a customer. Those reasons include if you're doing maybe some short-term rentals where you need to bill a customer for rentals, or storage. If you bill customers for storage of units, this is a great use for an AR invoice. You can create an AR invoice and bill the customer. In the past, what you've had to do is go to Tools, General PO and AR Invoices, and click AR Invoice. And then you would have to come down here and click Search and type in maybe the company number or the entity number, and then search for your AR invoices. And it even says GPO search at the top here. So that's a little bit cumbersome. So that's why we added this. It allows you to see a listing of all quotes and AR invoices. And the buttons at the bottom allow you to navigate from quotes over to invoices. And then finally, the AR invoices that have been posted to accounting. And you can see a listing of all voided AR invoices as well. Okay, so really, and these design features, if you've used the parts and service module, they're all very similar to that. So what I'll point out, just the basics here, we have the yellow filter bar at the top. So if I'm looking at my open AR invoices, I can actually come up here to entity name and type in the customer's name. And it will then filter out all my invoices to only show me what I typed in. Same thing is true for any of these other columns as well. You can sort them and filter them using that yellow filter bar at the top. To get rid of a filter, you just hit that little square with the line through it to clear the filter criteria. And then you'll go back to your full list for either quotes, invoices, or posted to accounting. And of course, if you double click on one of these, it is going to open up the AR invoice and allow you to make changes to it. And then of course, once you've posted it to accounting, this would essentially create accounts receivable and revenue for whatever it is you're billing the customer for. There's no inventory with this. It's really just I'm billing the customer for revenue, and we can receive the cash at some point later on. So if you're sending the customer a bill, or if you want to print out statements from the system, you're going to have to create AR invoices, and 05 AR invoice is just a great way to manage those. Now, if you want to create a new AR invoice, you're still going to have to go up to Tools, General PO, and AR Invoices, and click AR Invoice. Okay, but that's fine because that's actually how you would create a new AR invoice. Once you've done this, added a customer, put in a description, put in the revenue account, this is going to show up in either your quote, your invoice, or your posted to accounting list for searchability. So that feature is available. More than likely, it's in the software that you're currently using. You shouldn't have to have an update to the software to get this. And you just have to put in a request to allow you security access for that. All right, so the next thing to talk about is going to be 06, that's PO Receiver Control Center. And this is a little bit newer. I can't remember exactly when we released this, but you may or may not have access to this in your current version. You probably do. This isn't a brand new feature. We've had it for a little while now, but that's your PO Receiver Control Center. So one of the big uses for this is going to be allowing the accounting department to get a better handle on receiving tickets. So a lot of dealerships, what happens is you may have a business process where the parts receiving department is actually posting their receiving tickets to accounting and creating accounts payable for you. And then you have to go in and fix the problems, because a lot of times the invoice goes to the accounting department and the invoice is a little bit different from the parts that were received. So you have to then reopen it from the check writer or whatever and make your changes. So one way of getting around that and putting the control on the accounting department is the accounting department will actually be responsible for posting your receiving tickets to accounting. So that means the accounting department will actually look at all the receiving tickets, review them, and make their adjustments, and then click the button to create the accounts payable for those once they know it's accurate to the invoice from the supplier. All right, so I mean, honestly, different dealerships handle this in different ways. I'm not suggesting you change your process, but it seems like once a dealership grows past a certain size, you want to start taking more control over the accounting side of things. So this is a tool that can help you manage that. And the way it works is I start by searching for my supplier at the top. So in this case, if you have your supplier number, you can put in entity number. Let's say, for example, NTP is my entity number, and then hit search. It's going to load all POs and receiving tickets that apply to the entity number NTP. And so what I would do on this screen is use my yellow filter bar to drill down to the things that I want to see. So in this example, it's going to be everything, you know. So we basically look at everything that NTP has, and then we have to kind of filter it back from there. So probably what I want to do is set my filters for the type is going to be receiver, and then posted, I want posted to be false, right? So now in this control center, I am always looking at all receiving tickets for NTP that are not posted to accounting. So generally speaking, this means that the parts are here, but we haven't gotten the invoice yet. We don't know what the final payable amount is going to be. And then, so your accounting department would look through all these, open them up, and go ahead and make those changes to the receiving ticket right from accounting. One of the complaints that I have a lot of times is the accounting department is having to jump into the parts and service module and start looking through receiving tickets in order to find what they need. Well, the control center just makes it so much easier. You don't have to go outside of the accounting module. You're right here. You've got all the receiving tickets that you need. You can change them, you can receive them, and then finally post it to accounting. So the next thing that I want to talk about here is the yellow filter bar also gives you your entity reference to search by. Entity reference is going to be the invoice number from the supplier. So assuming the receiving department keys that information in on the receiving ticket, you can search by that as well as the document number, which would be your receiving ticket number. All right, so that's basically it in a nutshell. Some other things that I would say is you can click the Save Layout button, which will permanently keep your yellow filters in here. So if I always want to look at unposted receivers, and that's all I'm going to use this for, all I have to do is type in the entity number, and I can then hit search, and it will refresh my list of unposted receiving tickets. Other thing here, we have a customized layout button. This allows you to add columns to your search or remove columns. So say, for example, this is a one location dealership. I don't need to see the company or profit center. So let me come in here and uncheck company, uncheck PC, and you can see I'm just simplifying my screen so that there's less to look at. So I would suggest customizing your layout. Once you've got everything customized the way you like it, just hit the Save Layout button, and it'll save those columns as well as the filters that you put in here. So there's a lot of power in this, but you definitely have to be familiar with how the yellow filter bar works. Another thing I can do, like let's say, for example, I want to switch to looking at parts POs. I can just change the type to PO, and now we're looking at all these POs that were entered in under NTP. All right, so a lot of flexibility to look at that. But yeah, like I said, for the most part, the most utility that you're going to get out of this for the accounting department is most likely going to be not necessarily with purchase orders, but with the receiving tickets. All right, so those are all the new features. I think we've covered them in really good detail. Should have answered any questions that you have. If you do have any questions, I would say you can hit F1 on the keyboard and shoot those questions through the support department. So that's going to be true for any questions regarding information we covered today. Also, you might have to put in a request for security in order to enable the Ar invoices or enable the PO Control Center. And as I said, the PO Control Center is it's somewhat new. I want to say it's a couple of months old. You might have it, or we might have to update the software. So just be aware of that. All right, I appreciate everybody's attentiveness. I think looking at the meeting list, we ended up with about as many people as we started out with, so that's always a good sign. Like I said, if you have any other questions, feel free to email support. And thanks again. My name is Chris Hoffreiter, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.